All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And finally, the Raiden project is done. Well, I mean, as done as it can be in this arcade. It seems like every time I say something's done, there's always something extra I want to do, some little thing I want to add. But this has been something a little bit special. It's been a long time coming. This is one of those arcades that I knew that Arcade One Up just wasn't going to remake. It's not going to come to the iArcade. This game isn't going to be seen in a three-quarter scale market at all. At least for the foreseeable future. And it's just one of those things that in my arcade, I wanted a traditional American upright cabinet made of three-quarter inch MDF with the T-molding and all that, the heavy-duty metal control panel. I wanted that. I wanted one of those represented in my arcade to truly call this an arcade. It is, primarily made up of the three-quarter size stuff, and that's fine. There's some criticisms out there, and I get that. But realistically, if you want to have an arcade, uh, if you're going to have it full of these guys, you're going to be limited on space and ceiling height and all that. These definitely fill that void. They scratch that itch for anybody who maybe doesn't have the ability to maneuver one of these big bad boys around or several of these big bad boys around, and they just don't have the space. So it's definitely awesome to be able to have these options. But they're not going to make one for every game that you want. They're not going to make one for every game that ever existed ever. It's just not going to happen. It's not feasible. So what do? You make your own. And I think it's just great to have one of these represented in your arcade if you have the space. For me, I definitely wanted to have this cabinet. I wanted to have this in a full size. I wanted a real cabinet. And I also wanted to take on the challenge of seeing what it would take to take a horizontal monitor and swap this around to a vertical and do this modification, do this conversion, see what all that entails. It was really, really satisfying to go through this. It's something about, you've got a consumer product, you've got something that's residential, okay, and then you have industrial. It's kind of the way you look at this. It's the way I look at it. Arcade one-ups are great. They're definitely for the homeowner. They're for the person who wants to have them in their basement, and they put together like IKEA furniture and all that. And it's definitely a sort of a residential arcade machine. There's nothing wrong with that. I have several of them. I'm not knocking them. But if you want something more solid, robust, if you want something that really represents what these arcade machines, these arcade one-ups are trying to emulate, then you got to have one of these bad boys. This is the industrial side of that same application. Heavy duty stuff, heavy duty switches. The Cherry switches, the Cherry micro switches are in all my controls. I went with a sub, whatever the generic version is for my player one and player two. But the sticks are IL, the buttons are IL, and you got to do that if you want that true, authentic arcade experience. You got to do that. You got to swing for the fences and get the good stuff. And I think that for the most part, that's what I did on this cabinet. Going back to that screen conversion, it was really fun to see. You're kind of stepping back in time with these monitors, not just the technology, but to think that they would make these chassis and these frames for a multitude of different arcades. Looking at the way that they plan for that, I mean, you've got different holes for the framework itself to be able to adjust things around. And you saw me do that with this arcade cabinet, with this monitor. It wasn't just as simple as flipping it over. Like with a candy cap per se, you've got the ability to sort of just flip that over on its side and call it good. That wasn't necessarily the case with this. It was fun to go through that and figure that out, right? When we took the chassis, the actual CRT chassis, and slid that down and drilled new holes for that, that was just one of those things you got to think outside the box just a little bit, while at the same time maintaining the integrity of the CRT. You don't want to disturb that in any way, shape, or form. And for the most part, I didn't do that. There is a little bit of discoloration on the bottom. I got to do some degaussing. It's degaussing. It's not degassing, which is what I said in the original video. But I got to get a degassing or degaussing tool, the coil, a big coil to take care of that. The artwork is really fun. I wanted to have some kind of a mix of authentic, traditional fab tech, which was kind of generic, kind of plain, just the gray. You got the simple graphic on the side. I changed it up just a little bit with the gray T-molding, which I thought was a good choice overall because it makes it stand out, but not in a way that's gaudy. I could have probably gone with red, but I wanted something that just looked a little bit different. And it's understated, which I like. It doesn't quite match the gray on the control panel, but that's okay. That's fine. It is what it is, right? Switching over to this bezel artwork, I like it a lot. I've toyed with the idea of maybe changing the red Japanese font there, the paint brushing, to a gray to kind of match the rest of the control panel and the T molding. I looked at that in my editing software, and I didn't really like the way that looked. I think I'm going to definitely just leave it the way it is. I like the red. Incorporating some of that Japanese artwork over here on the left and the right side of the monitor, I think was a great choice. Kind of gives you, because it's all in Japanese writing. The words are all in Japanese, and it's a traditional sort of bit of. I don't know if this is actually on the arcade or if this is just something like you saw in a magazine, or maybe it's like a flyer or something you saw maybe in the magazines when talking about these arcades. So I wanted to incorporate that, and that was cool. Jumping back on this control panel, you saw the work that was done. You saw the metal work that had to be done to repair some of the holes. And when you rub your hand across this, you can feel some of the imperfections. But that's okay. I don't mind that. You also see some of the imperfections on the side of the side art, or not the side art, but the side panel. And I don't mind that either. It's, this thing's kind of battle worn, battle tested. It's spent some time in an arcade, and I like that. I'm digging that. The inside of the arcade looks great. The wiring is good. The overall shape of the cabinets, it's in really good. It's in really good shape for the most part. The wood is not all just destroyed, down at the bottom, which usually these things tend to be. Overall, it's in good shape, but it has some signs of wear, and I wanted to keep some of that. I did touch up some of the paint, but I wanted to keep some of the imperfections. I think it adds to the authenticity of the cabinet itself. But yeah, I'm proud of the control panel, the way that this worked out, incorporating just a little bit of custom artwork on this control panel instead of just going with the standard gray FabTech overlay, which would have been totally arcade accurate and fine. I loved the addition of this Raiden 2 control, these controls, the control labels, I guess, is what they're called. Usually one big piece of artwork. I cut that up into two, and I outlined it in blue for player 2, and over here it's outlined in red for player 1. Just something I'm really digging. And I kind of alluded to this before. The arcade is never really truly 100% finished because I'm not digging the marquee. The artwork is okay. It's, from what I understand, it is original, but I think I can do something a little bit better. So I'm going with a more high definition image, and I think that can really be cleaned up a little bit, and maybe take that image and shrink it down just a touch. I think that could be done just a little bit better. So not 100% arcade accurate. A few liberties were taken in this, but I think it definitely captures the aesthetic overall. It captures the feeling of the original arcade, and the thing plays great. I love the game. If you're a fan of shoot 'em ups, this cabinet's going to lend itself well to not only this PCB but other PCBs. That's a great thing about these. While not a cartridge-based system like SNK, you can just swap out, because of the JAMA standard. You can swap that PCB out with different games. So if I decide to go with maybe Raiden 1, maybe some of the other Raiden games in the series, I really want to get my hands on a Raiden DX board. That's not exactly the easiest thing to find, but it's something I would like to have. I think it would really complement this. But for the most part, I gotta say, I've just really enjoyed this, and it's a nice change of pace from your arcade one-ups, your half-inch MDF, your standard stuff, swapping out parts, going full custom and doing something a little bit different. Taking a bunch of liberties, but usually just dealing with wood and plastic with an arcade one-up. You're not doing that here. There's metal. There's a ton of wiring. There's different harnesses. You have different things that you've got different connectors that separate those sub harnesses. You have the harness up here for the control panel, and then power harnesses and all these things. It's really interesting to dig into and see what was done back in the day. This is like a mid to late '90s cab, so it's not really that old when you think about the history of arcade machines overall. This is one of my favorite upright cabinets. No, I'm just going to say it. This is my favorite upright cabinet as far as generic upright cabinets go. Dynamo HS5 is definitely, it's awesome. I really, really dig it. I dig the style, and it just reminds me of every game I ever played, ever, honestly. So I love this style. I love the design, and I'm really digging it. Like I said, it's got the small imperfections, but I'm okay with that. That's fine. And there's the little custom touches everywhere that make it a little bit unique, make it definitely mine. Everything from the LED bulbs that I replaced for the coin door that really make that shine, really make that nice and crisp, and then also replacing those push buttons with brand new Suzo Hap lenses, crystal clear. added with the LED light behind it, man, it just really makes it look sharp. And it's just little things like that that really make this thing pop, which is kind of why, you got this clarity down here. I really want to get something a little more clear up here, a little more high def, because it's got a great LED bar behind that to shine through. Overall, I gotta say, this is an excellent addition to my arcade. And I think that if you've got the space, if you've got the room, I think it's a great idea as you build your 3/4 scale cabinet arcade, as you get your countercades and all that stuff, and you had those representations, those modern representations of the classics. I think it's a great idea, if you can, to incorporate at least one full-size arcade in that space, because it is sort of the thing that reminds people that come into your arcade, it reminds you of what inspired all of this. That's why I think I needed it in my arcade. I really wanted this game, and the two just kind of made sense. They're not going to make Raiden 2. I wanted a real full-size arcade, and I went for it. And listen, this wasn't exactly what I wanted when I first bought it. Surf Planet, believe it or not, was not my first choice. So, but don't let that intimidate you. If you find something, you find a good solid cabinet, and maybe the game isn't exactly what you want, maybe the controls aren't exactly what you want, don't let that intimidate you. Don't let that stop you. You can take that, get it at a good price, right? Because you're not getting exactly what you want, but get it at a good price, $400, somewhere in there, right? And then now that's your basis. That's your foundation for your project. And then you just go from there. At the end of the day, it really wasn't that difficult to get this thing up and running. If I had a good monitor to start with, the cost on this would be within reason. But because I didn't have a good monitor and had to outsource that, because I had that 7400 instead of a 7000, 7000 is much more common. I had a 7400 chassis or monitor, and to get a new chassis or just to get the flyback, I got the cap kit, but I couldn't find a flyback, and that was the big issue. That was the big problem. So I had to go get another monitor. That was $300. But if you're looking at the cost of the cab, which was $500, you're looking at the cost of the new monitor, which is $300. You're $800 in. Now you talk about the controls; they're really not that expensive. Less than $100 for all these buttons and cherry switches and all that. I was able to reuse the wiring harness. I just had to go point by point because I couldn't find an I/O screen on this game. No problem. I just went, once I got the game fired up and I was down to just testing out the controls, I had all the controls installed. I just went wire by wire. After I hooked up all my grounds, I just went wire by wire and tested every single input, and I was able to figure it out. Luckily, there's not that many, so it was a little bit easier. But yeah, so you're talking about the cost of the like I said, $100, let's say, for all the controls. Artwork is going to be a little pricey, not as bad with this cabinet, because, and usually with some of your other cabinets, you're going to go with a single piece of smaller artwork in the center. If you think about the Capcom cabinets with like Street Fighter, you just had a single Street Fighter image right here. Just kind of stick it wherever you want, put it in an angle, or put it level like I have here with my FabTech sticker. That's not bad. You're looking at like $100 for both. The control panel was custom, so that was around $75, I think, for that. Obviously, this bezel was custom. That was about $65 for that, to get that printed. And then the MDF that I had to use, I had to cut out a brand new bezel to support this graphic. I had that kicking around, so that was really no big deal, but you can put some money in there. If you get a good cab, like I have, and you have to get another monitor, and you have to go source a new PCB, $1,300 really isn't bad, especially when you consider the new Killer Instinct Pro that was just released by Arcade1Up at $1,000. You can see that it's not crazy to take on a project like this when you really consider the cost of what is essentially a arcade recreation from Arcade1Up, $1,000. I think the only big difference is definitely going to be the monitor. Big, heavy CRT. Who knows how long it's going to last versus their LCD, but this is 25-inch versus their 19. So anyway, thank you so much for stopping by, checking out the channel. Y'all have a blessed day, and I will see you next time.